Good day everyone, I am Christian Francisco and today I am going to be reporting the sample lesson 1 entitled Using a Rule to Teach Question Formation, which is pre-intermediate. In the illustrations that I will show you, it shows the teacher using an illustrated explanation to highlight a feature of English syntax. So on step 1, the teacher writes a sentence on the board which read, "The president phoned the queen." The teacher then asks the students to identify the verb on the sentence, which is phoned. Next is the subject of the sentence, which is the president, and lastly the object, which is the queen. She reminded the students that English word order follows a pattern, which is a subject, verb, and object, or SVO. So in step 2, the teacher then changes the president to someone providing the question, "Who phoned the queen?" She writes it on the board with an answer. She then comes back to the original sentence and changes the queen to someone. She elicits or models the question and the answer and also writes it on the board. The teacher informs them to study the question and think about the difference between the subject question, which is on number 1, and the object question, which is on the number 2. Step 3, the teacher explains the difference. She points out that to form questions about the subject of the sentence requires no change in the word order. However, to form questions about parts of the sentence after the verb, in this case the object, then it does require a change in the standard word order. This change is called inversion. Inversion here is achieved by unpacking the verb phoned into its components, did plus phone, and then enlisting the auxiliary did to perform the inversion. So on step 4, the teacher places 4 pictures of famous people. She explains that the arrows represent phone calls. She asks a variety of questions, for example, she then tells them to continue the activity in pairs and invites them to make new phone networks by changing the names of the people in the diagram and continue the question and answer activity. On step 5, the teacher writes on the board. She then asks students to ask and answer questions in pairs. She then erases the questions on the board in order to make them independent and rely on their knowledge on the written form. She then asks students individually what they have found out to the whole class. Alternative or additional questions might be. So step 1's purpose therefore is to establish the terminology to explain the difference between subject and object questions. Step 2 establishes a contrast between two grammatical forms, in this case subject questions and object questions, with a view to raising the students' awareness of the difference. The principle operating here is that it is often easier to establish a language rule in students' mind by contrasting two forms that are different in only one respect. These are known as minimal pairs. On step 3, the teacher have already engaged the students' curiosity and having primed them to be prepared for a grammar explanation. The teacher then explains the language point. She also used the board to provide a visual reinforcement of her explanation. So step 4 is designed to test the learner's grasp of the rule and to prepare them for independent practice. The students are then allowed some less teacher-led practice with the opportunity of providing their own content to the exercise. So step 5 continues in the direction of greater freedom and creativity by offering the students a chance to personalize the language point and by letting them report their own findings. It requires them to listen to each other with a focus on meaning as much as on reform. So efficiency. It depends on the kind of rule being explained and also on the teacher monitoring the learner's degree of comprehension at every stage of the explanation and responding immediately to any problem they might have. If the rule is a relatively simple one, then this approach can be extremely economic in terms of time. A simple rule might be one that involves a simple manipulation of elements, such as the active to passive operation, or one where there is a straightforward relation with few or no exceptions between a form and its use, such as the case of the third person with s on the present simple verb such as he works. So next is the is. The grammar explanation approach is also very easy, in that it involves few if any materials and requires little or no preparation. It is therefore one of the most efficient ways of dealing with grammar problems that might arise in the course of a lesson as a result, for example, of a student's error. So lastly is the efficacy. There have been a number of research studies comparing the efficacy of deductive and inductive approaches to grammar teaching, but on the whole, the results have been inconclusive. There is no doubt due to the number of variables involved, for example, the students' preferred learning styles and the teacher's explanatory skills. A key factor seems to be the kind of item being taught. So, grammatical items seems to lend themselves to a deductive treatment and others to an inductive one. One problem in the minimal pairs approach to grammar presentation is the lack of context. The difference, for example, between may in the absence of more context be difficult for the students to locate. The deductive approach is particularly appropriate for adult learners whose learning style and expectations predispose them to a more analytical and reflective approach to language learning. This of course means that it will not be suitable for learners who would rather learn through the experience of communicating.